Welcome to Our Soul Whisper with Cathi Belmont and co-host Dr. Pat, a sacred space for self-discovery, healing, and transformation. At the heart of Our Soul Whisper is the sacred truth. When we pause and listen inward, the soul always speaks. This show offers a safe, empowering space where those whispers are heard, honored, and lovingly guided into full expression. Each episode invites you to be curious about yourself and the reality you're in, while gently reminding you that you are exactly where you need to be. Let today's message settle in your heart. Maybe even journal about it. And if something resonates, peace, clarity, or insight, pass it along to someone whose soul might be calling for the same. Keep listening inward. Your soul knows the way. Our Soul Whisper starts now. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Pat, and Cathi and I are really going to take this down today. Dare to be real. Truth as a bridge to freedom and a connection. Where are you, me, where are we pretending everything is just fine? When? Kind of not. What parts of you stay silent out of fear, conflict, or rejection? Cathi, this is like a super important conversation because I just caught myself. I always prepare for the shows, and I just caught myself being right in the middle of doing this whole thing you're talking about. So tell us about where this comes from. And there is a really important piece when we pretend, and it's very different than holding an intention. So I want to be really clear. Pretending everything is okay and hiding things, that's not the same as not talking fear out loud. So we can still talk positive and call things in, but being in denial is not going to get us to asking for what's the solution, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's for me it was really, like you said, it's that denial piece, but it's also like we know the truth for ourselves. We know our truth when we're say we want to do something, or there's something we want to do in our life and we're not doing it, and we can chat that away and excuse after excuse. But when it comes down to it, we're left with that feeling of, okay, I know my truth. And, with other people, we can, maybe not say something, or, issue will come up and we don't 100% get at that core of what it really is. And so we can kind of maybe wait for the other person to say, oh, okay, well, all right, but we're left with, yeah, we still didn't get to it. And so those, it fractures our energy. It takes it, it takes it away,
Yeah.
it fractures them. It's in all these pieces and we're not left whole.
Yeah.
So, there's a great quote I love by Mark Twain. I read it every once in a while. It says, if you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything. And, it goes with, I know we're talking about being truthful with ourselves, but also, if we don't say exactly what we mean to say, or, we want to tell that little white lie, or, and then we have to remember that stuff. But if we come from our truth, from where it is, that core, we never have to do that. We can always come to that place. Again, it's going back to that centered place. So, it's,
Well, but here's the problem. If we don't really look at it, then, so I believe in asking the universe for help.
yeah,
Like, it doesn't have to be a big deal.
right.
It doesn't have to be, please stop my brick wall from falling down. But although I do that one right there on that brick wall right there. Every day of our lives, we're hit with situations. This morning for me, I had 5 situations that showed up. Very unexpected. And I have a doctor's appointment today. And so I wasn't sharing information with my immediate team and friends. So I decided today, after reading getting ready for the show, I just need to tell people a little information. So when they see something on the calendar, we're not going into overload about it. But part of what you're talking about and part of pulling this together, it's also to clear energy. I mean,
Hmm.
holding secrets. I mean, my family was full of them. I told you that.
Yeah.
I told you
Hmm. Yeah.
Papa was born in Brazil, Brazilian farmer, and we kept that a secret for like, I don't know, like 100 years. But
Yeah.
for you, the more we hold within, doesn't it accumulate, Cathi?
It does accumulate, and we can feel that. And I think eventually it really, it takes away our power. It takes away how we want to be in the world. And it's also like, well, we can say, well, I'm not going to say that now, or just kind of gloss things over. And in the short term, it may seem to be okay, but long term, yeah, it erodes, and that energy we can feel it. And then we think we're in this great space, maybe with ourselves or with another person. And it's just an illusion, really, because we're not being real, and we're also not we're not giving ourselves and say the other people or other person that we may be dealing with, an opportunity for them to grow. Maybe as we get to this core issue of what's going on, we give them an opportunity to say, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't looked at that either, or I didn't
Mm-hmm.
really realize that about myself. So we're not only preventing ourselves from growing, but other people
Mm-hmm.
too. So being able to look at it from that point. And
Yeah.
then too, why are we so afraid? What's going on? It's coming back to those parts of ourselves. What are we afraid of? Are we afraid of being
Yeah.
rejected? Is the relationship going to go away? Are they going to get mad? And I've found in my, experiences, the longer it goes on, the worse, the worse it gets. Because it's
Right?
that anticipation, because that conversation with ourselves or others is going to happen at some point. I think all of our listeners can appreciate the fact that life continues to give us those opportunities. And I think we've talked about it in previous shows where it may be a little, hey, Kath, knock, knock. And then all of a sudden it gets a whole lot louder and a little more painful. So,
Yeah.
you know, I want to avoid the pain. I've learned.
Oh, yeah,
So,
I agree with you 1,000,000%. But the other thing that's so important I want to ask you about, and it's one of the things we're going to talk about today, is this idea, and I love that you're bringing this up, right? One of the quotes you have in here is by Mark Twain. And part of that, though, is looking at it we give our power away. It really what this show is about, Cathi, is the basis for why we decided to expand. And, we did that pre-COVID. We made a conscious decision to redo everything
mhm,
and come out bigger and come out with
mhm,
a stronger voice because we learned some things during the pandemic that we didn't see coming. And even
mhm.
now we're thinking about, the voice. So let me ask you this. When we silence our truth, and that's what's happening, then what are we telling ourselves? Are we telling ourselves we don't matter? What is it we're saying to ourselves and holding?
Yeah, we're saying that our voice doesn't matter, that the truth of us doesn't matter. We're holding back, and we're not allowing ourselves to be
Yeah,
seen. We're giving it away. We're
yeah.
giving that power away. And then how are we left? We're left depleted, or if we don't say something and then something doesn't happen, we end up getting resentful or angry,
Hmm.
and it gets all bundled up. And then before we know it, we forget what's going on,
Yeah, I
you
spent
know?
10 years studying psychological contract violations. I'm gonna tell you, that whole thing about like making a commitment and then it doesn't happen, and oh my gosh. But part of this, it
Mhm.
was funny because we had these meetings with people about our launch, and it was very exciting. But I remember making the caveat because I come from Bell Labs. Bell Labs, they created all that software.
Mm.
So I understand the hiccups. So I remember saying, not really negatively, but I remember throwing like a little plant in a seed that says, hey, this is a major technological overhaul. So please be patient with us. You
Mhm.
know, websites may take longer, and okay, but we'll get them up. We just don't know what to expect. And I had to say that. And lo and behold, there are some hiccups that we're getting rid of every day, but it's normal. You see, you make a choice. Do you
Mhm.
hold back until you think it's perfect? We could have never done that and made it
Mhm.
work. And
Mhm.
people really appreciated that. But that wasn't an
Mhm.
easy thing to say to people, Cathi, for me,
Right,
at least.
right. Yeah, yeah. And it's addressing it when it comes up too, having that courage to say, okay, it's a little uncomfortable, but I need to say it. Or if there's something underlying there. Yeah, it's to clear the air. It's that communication that, realizing that, if we're feeling something, maybe the other party or group is too, so it's going back to that oneness too. I think we can all appreciate that we we know that other people, we've all experienced similar things, and so it can make it less scary to say, this is what's going on. And I think if we trust that people can appreciate that.
Mm,
And you mentioned earlier that it's a little different than intention, but I think if we can to make it an intention to say, I want to be in my truth here, which is the best
exactly.
path. And it's not we don't have to give away everything, because I believe in boundaries, and I'm a pretty private person. And it took me a while to own that. And it's also learning the difference between honoring who we are and what we want to say and what we don't, and knowing there's that part where there is something that does
Mhm.
need to be said or shared.
Yeah,
So it can be a very tricky thing to figure out sometimes, but the more we're real with ourselves and the more we go there, I think we can say, yeah, I survived it. I mean, it was, I've um, gone to some painful places, and I can see how, I don't want to dig myself in that hole again. And I've also learned to, it's not just about me, but it's about the other people as well. And that's
yeah,
what keeps me going, as far as going to that truth and stepping back and say, well, how am I affecting other people?
yeah,
And that usually takes me out of my stuff and
yeah.
helps me get real.
So, what we're talking about here is you have to tell the truth. Now, I'm part of a 12-step program, and anybody that knows anything about that, when you go through that fourth step, and I have 35 years, so, coming up on doing that every year or so, when you go through that program, you don't hide. So, it's not
Mhm.
about making everything beautiful out there. The truth sometimes is, and especially when it comes to behavior, there's no what's the word? There's not a workaround for behavior that needs to be talked about. There's not like a
Mhm.
workaround. There's not like sugarcoating, like, yeah, I didn't mean to break your window. Like, how do you sugarcoat that? I don't even know what that's about. But we're talking about a truth of sense that frees the parties involved, not just one person. I mean, it does for you, but then you have to be open enough, don't you? So let's talk about this. What happens when we hide our truth to keep ourselves, but even more importantly, this is the one, other people comfortable, Cathi. Do you do any of that?
A little bit. Yeah, we want things to be, we don't want to rock that boat, you know. And sometimes if we rock that boat, we don't know what's going to happen, and if we're coming from, a background of a lot of unknowns and a lot of kind of not fun experiences as we grown up, we learn to not know what's going to happen, if we do that. And so I think we learned that, okay, if everything feels comfortable, everything's going to be okay. And I think, though, as we learn to grow and trust ourselves and do our inner work, our perception can change around that. And we can get to the place where, well, comfortable may short term be
Hmm.
okay, but in the long term, it's really, we're just not valuing ourselves or others,
Yeah.
And I know it can sound, easy, but I think when you go through enough experiences and you learn the costs of those,
Mhm.
I've come to realize I don't want to pay that anymore,
Yeah, I don't either.
and I can go there and I can see myself dipping in that. And it's like, no, I remember, no, it doesn't work for me anymore. And so I think it's just continuing to go back and
Yeah.
back. And it's that truth within ourselves. We know. Maybe other people, we may be able to bluff it for a while. But energy doesn't, energy speaks a lot. And even though we don't think people can feel it, they can,
Mhm.
because as we know in this new age now, we're realizing how connected we really are. And it's not as easy to hide, I think.
Yeah,
At
you're
least I'm
absolutely.
finding.
Yeah,
So,
you're absolutely right. And the other thing too that I wanted to just chat with you about, if you could just comment on this, is this is something I know you teach and you coach people. What if we could come from love? What if we could come from
mm,
a place of love? And
mm,
there are people that you could read about that have walked the earth thousands of years ago. And the stories we hear are the ones where the person, even though they behaved badly, acted then in the end from a place of love,
mhm.
right? And so when we hear these things, what does it take for us to come to that place? And how do we examine our motives?
Yeah, that's a big question. It's, you ask yourself, what is my motive? What's going on? What's driving me saying or not saying something? Um, it's what I teach and what I do in my work is asking questions to allow people to dig deeper and to see what that's all about. What is keeping them coming from that place of love and really wanting to figure something out, or is your motive wanting to be right? You know, so it's really allowing people to get to that truth, and it could be an integrative process, or it could be just what's blocking you and and really what's getting to your motivation. It could be a relationship issue. Things aren't working. Look at your motive. Do you want to be right? Or do you want to really have value for that person? There's, something, that I read and it says, I value you enough to be real with you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so beautiful. And I just wanted to include that here because when we come from that place of love, really ultimately, but kindness and compassion, if we're dealing with another person, if we come from that place, that's going to change everything as opposed to going in wanting to be right or, you know, thinking you've been wronged or whatever's going on up here. Where do we want to come from?
Yeah. I
That's
mean,
the
and
driver.
it is the driver. And I love what you said. I want to hang on to what you said before. It took me, I don't know, maybe 10, 11 years to figure out what to say when I was standing in front of somebody and making an amends, right? And I'll
Mm,
tell you, it's really more of an art than it is anything else. But
mm,
calling in spirit in those moments where the conversation may seem difficult, I don't know how to do it anymore without calling in
mm,
my version of spirituality because my soul over here, like you would say, is whispering to me.
mm, mm,
It's telling me. It's like Pat, you need to go blah, 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 right? And so it may take me a while because I'm private. I'm like you. People don't get it. I'm really an introvert. But in the end, what you just said, that is a door opener. I really value you. And I've got something to say to you and tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. What does that
Yeah.
feel like when you do that? When a person does that? What is it? What do your clients, talk about from where you sit when they have a tough situation? Because everybody's got this, Cathi. Come on now.
Oh,
We're not
sure.
like talking about me and you here. I want to talk to the audience right now. How many of you out there, right? Did you hear a question initially? Are you hiding something? How long have you been hiding it? Now, we
Mm-hmm.
know from the LGBTQ population what it's like to hide things,
Mm-hmm.
right? We've seen that. Also, what it's like to hide things in other populations.
Mm-hmm.
But from a personal level, it doesn't matter who you are, what you look like, who you love, hiding something, it's toxic, isn't it?
It is toxic because it slowly erodes and takes away our who we are and our expression. We talk about wanting to be authentic, yet if we're hiding, we it takes it away and we can feel that. And it can be subtle, and then all of a sudden we're in this place where we're sad or we're depressed or we're not being who we want to be. And when I work with clients, it's getting to those questions. And people, when they realize that they have been denying their truth, there's a lot of silence. Sometimes there's just not a lot to say. They hit that moment and they're like, wow, I didn't realize that. And it's giving them that safe space to be able to go there. I think, I can relate because I know for me, I need that safe space. So I that's my number one intention when I have a session. I prepare myself to create that space for them to go where they need to go, to find that place with them that's like, wow. And then they can, they're a new person. They've got a new awareness. They could be like, yeah, does this work for me now or not? Giving
Yeah,
giving them the opportunity to ask those questions of themselves.
yeah. The untruth is an illusion.
Yeah,
It is an illusion.
it's an illusion.
At least for me, I have done so many of these now, and still I'm not done. Every day there's something pops up where I'm thinking, why did this person come into my life? But it's illusion. Telling the truth, though, helps get rid of that illusion, doesn't it?
It does. It does because we're not living from this place of keeping things comfortable. We're going to the place where it's real.
Yeah.
And we have to be vulnerable sometimes. And you
Yeah.
know, who likes to be vulnerable? Well, it's learning to be comfortable with that. And it's learning that it's not a weakness. I don't know if that's still a thing, but
What?
it can be a belief, a strong
Yeah.
belief that it's a weakness, but it's not because we all we all have those experiences. And when we can be vulnerable with others, you go to these workshops or these gatherings and everybody's vulnerable, you can just fall right into that. It's so easy and it's so, I'm bringing Hawaii back. It's so um, freeing and releasing to be in that space. So if you allow yourself to be vulnerable, and as coaches, I'm going through some accreditation right now and going through my code of ethics and all of that, my competencies, and it's one of them is being just as vulnerable as a coach and
Yeah.
allowing the client to know, yeah, there
Well,
it's creating that safe space for them.
I want to give out your phone number and way to contact you, but I'm going to tell you, preparing for this, I'll tell you what it's done for me.
Mm,
So today is Wednesday. We've been communicating with people last week. I need to send an email out to all of our hosts, all of the people that have been waiting for the database. And I just need to send a short email and thank them for their patience and let them know where we are
mhm,
because it's the right thing to do.
mhm,
And, I know Linda calls everybody, but I think I need to just come out and say, here's where we are. There's some things that are going really well and some things taking a little bit longer, but please be patient. We're
mhm,
working on a completion date of Friday and just putting it out there. but I wouldn't have thought to do that had I not prepared for this show. So I want to thank you personally for that. It just never entered my mind, right? My head's down, getting up at 2 a.m, just cranking it out. And I never thought to just reach back out to people. So thank you for that, Cathi. Now, let everybody know how they can work with you, because this is just a taste of what you do to help people. And congratulations on your certifications.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm getting there.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Let's give them your website
Yeah.
and how to contact you. And thank you so much for this topic.
No, you're welcome. OurSoulWhisper.com. It's all there. I would love to have a conversation with you. There's free consultations there. Would just love to connect and see if it's something that resonates with you. You know, it's the more we dig in and get truthful with ourselves and get to those places, we make different decisions, and that's what changes our life. We come from
And
that
we
place.
learn the progressive nature of how to do this and love ourselves as well
Yeah.
as others. Thank you, Cathi, so much
Yeah.
for today.
Thank you,
Cathi
Dr. Pat.
Belmont, everybody. And as we said before, this is the topic. Please think about it. Call Cathi if you need help. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to Our Soul Whisper with Cathi and Dr. Pat. Tune in every first and third Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific on transformationtalkradio.com and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Take a moment now to breathe in and reflect on today's message. If it brought you peace, clarity, or insight, let it settle in your heart and maybe even journal about it. Remember to like and share this episode with someone who's ready to listen within. May our soulful echoes ripple outward, awakening awareness and deep remembrance. If this show touched something within you, share it. Let's create a world where most of us pause, listen inward, and allow our light to shine. Visit OurSoulWhisper.com for more.